From the site of Noah's Ark to the depths of the Red Sea, the grandeur of Mount Sinai and the ash ruins of Sodom and Gomorrah, these and other new surprising discoveries are brought to life in this series by international explorer, archaeologist and author Jonathan Gray.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Gray. On this excursion we shall explore through heaven and earth, from the glories of the distant galaxies to the coded message of the ancient star maps. It's a fascinating quest as we discover the truth behind star signs. I should warn you, however, you could be in for a big surprise. In fact, one of the surprises of your life. Jill stepped from under the shop veranda. It was raining. A passing van swished mud on her stockings. She paused to wipe them and fix her umbrella, then pushed out into the blinding rain. Screech! Thud! Jill Herring's life was over. Till now it had been roses. An astrologer promised for her a tall, dark stranger and children. Even the long trip had been hinted at. Great stuff, this astrology. Soon, she was assured, would come a nice surprise. Poor Jill. A surprise indeed. What went wrong? Very early in human history, the stars were named and arranged into groups which we call constellations, and drawn on sky charts as pictures of animals, people and other objects. They have survived on astronomical charts to this day. These constellations extend in a belt about 16 degrees wide over the sky, encircling the Earth. If the stars could be seen in daytime, the sun would appear to move through this belt over the course of 1 year in a path we call the ecliptic. It is this belt, with 12 months for its steps or stages, that we call the zodiac, which means simply a way by steps. Each stage of the yearly circle contains its own group of stars designated by a picture or sign. These are the 12 signs of the zodiac. Did I say 12? Make that 48. For each of these 12 signs is co-joined with 3 others, known as decans. The primeval star charts therefore contained 12 basic signs and 36 explanatory signs, making a total of 48. Does this universal language of the stars, as some believe, contain a message for mankind, or is it just nonsense? Tony Lawrence was a New Age devotee. This motivated him to do thorough research into the practice of astrology, and what Tony discovered surprised him. He writes, "Through the years I studied astrology. I was always curious about the signs themselves, notwithstanding the effect they had purportedly on our lives. I wanted to know what they actually meant. Discovering this would not be easy. No astrologist, famous or unknown, could tell me anything. They could tell me all about how the signs affect one another, the houses, the decans, relationships to other constellations, etc. But the actual signs were a complete mystery among the entire international astrological community. In fact, one of them told me, 'Don't worry about what they might mean. Whatever they meant has long been lost. Just let's worry about how they affect us.' However, I was not satisfied. I had to discover why these particular signs were chosen for certain star groups. What was their esoteric meaning? What is the meaning of the water bearer? What is the message of Capricorn, the head and torso of a dying goat with back parts of a writhing fish? What is the meaning of the scales, known as Libra? Or the ox, that's Taurus, and all the other creatures and objects? I was certain that if I uncovered the secret message of the zodiac, I could find marvellous hidden treasures. For example, possibly the identity of the Christ or the Messiah of the Aquarian age. The signs were there for a purpose, and I wanted to discover what that purpose was. I started my quest by comparing various astrological charts and found that other cultures do not always use the same signs we use. The Chinese, for example, use such things as a horse, dog, chicken, etc. The ancient Chinese signs had been the same as our Occidental version, but a long time ago a Chinese emperor had changed them. I also discovered, surprisingly, that the earliest charts of the zodiac were Hebrew. The Greeks derived their knowledge of the zodiac from the Hebrews. The Romans got their information from the Arabs, who also had received it from the Hebrews. Well, this led Troy Lawrence to the record of the Hebrews, that is, the Bible, to solve the mystery. And he reports, "If I could uncover the hidden meaning of these signs, I could unveil the great truths originally declared by those who created the signs. Little did I know that I was about to embark on an awesome tour. I would indeed discover long hidden secrets, shrouded information that nonetheless left a clear message for our time." Modern fortune telling by astrology, friends, has its origins in Babylon, around 300 BC. The system was built on the notion that the stars themselves were gods with intelligence, emotions and will. The stars, knowing what was best, wisely chose each person's destiny. Today, a person is said to be born under a particular star sign, and that star sign is supposed to guide his life. Present-day astrology is based on where the stars were in the sky over 2,000 years ago, when the horoscope was invented. However, since the horoscope was invented, the position of the Earth in space has moved about 30 degrees or a full sign. As a result, the dates for each sign are no longer representing the time when the Sun is in the related constellation. Today, when according to astrology, the Sun is supposed to be in Aries, it is really in Pisces. So if you were a Cancer, you should really be instead a Leo. But even then, planetary influences upon your life are not really significant. An investigation by the American Association of Scientific Studies showed that none of the influences alleged by the astrologers was verified. Although the Sun and Moon are significant in their effect on natural Earth phenomena, measurable physical effects of the planets are refuted by science. The star signs in use today are much older than astrology. So where did they come from? In my book Dead Men's Secrets, I describe how the ancient civilizations mapped the whole ancient world. At least 14 ancient maps survive. The old civilizations also charted accurate maps of the sky, and on those sky charts the stars were arranged into groups which today we call constellations. The features of those sky maps show them to be about 6,000 years old. How do we know that? Well, let's take land maps as an example. Maps of the Earth portray features for the benefit of contemporaries who will use them. Because boundaries, physical features and roads or knowledge of the area may change over the years, one can usually discover for what time in history a map was prepared by the features on it. Similarly, maps of the sky reflect features that can date them. The face of the sky as seen from Earth changes about 90 degrees in 6,000 years, because the Earth and our solar system are moving through space in a vast orbit. On the oldest sky charts, the Southern Cross was visible in the northern hemisphere from 40 degrees northern latitude. On the oldest sky charts, Alpha in Draco was the pole star. In that remote age, the star group Taurus opened the equinoctial year, with the sun crossing that part of the sky in March. It no longer does that. At that time of the year, the sun is now 90 degrees further around the sky in Aquarius. On the oldest sky charts, the summer solstice was in the first degree of Virgo. Put simply, we have moved through space 90 degrees, or a quarter of a circle against the background of the stars, since the earliest sky maps were recorded. This means that the features on those maps are 6,000 years old, approximately. On the sky maps, the groups of stars were overlaid with pictures. Pictures of people, animals and other objects. These ancient pictures and their star names were carefully chosen and set in a sequence to tell a story. The story comprised 48 pictures and hundreds of names. So what was this story pictured on the ancient star maps? Well, here's my answer. The ancient civilizations believed that a serpent, representing the devil, had taken control of the earth. They believed that a virgin's baby would fight the serpent, defeat him, and bring life, peace and happiness back to mankind. The pictures on the sky map were used to describe the story and not to tell people's fortunes through the stars. The very names of the stars, as well as the star sign pictures, told that story. According to the story, behind the scenes a deadly drama is being played out. It is much bigger than you might expect. The action is on this planet, but it involves the whole universe, and you and I, as citizens of planet Earth, are caught in it. Now, how it began is portrayed and how it will end. The same story is recorded in the ancient texts. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. It began, we are informed, with a real Star Wars rebellion, a strange cosmic war in which not a shot was fired and in which not one participant died. And it concerns each of us personally. Of course, that does raise another question. Out in that universe whose bright lights we can see each night, astronomers reason that there must be many worlds inhabited by people like ourselves. Dr. Alan Wright, a radio astronomer at the Parkes Observatory, New South Wales, Australia, says it's the height of egotism and arrogance for us to believe that of the 1,000 million stars in our galaxy alone, Ours is the only one that has a planet that supports life. Strong circumstantial evidence that other stars have planets. Numerous red and yellow dwarf stars, like the Sun, rotate more slowly than might be expected of bodies their size. This indicates they have planets in orbit around them. An infrared astronomy satellite launched by the United States found that some stars had a blurry appearance. This suggested they had cooler material, probably planets, orbiting around them. There are also some mighty hot clues in the biblical writings that our universe is teeming with intelligent life, and all are in harmony with their Creator, loyal subjects of His kingdom. Unlike this planet, they have not rebelled. The drama began, we are told, in the deep reaches of space, beyond the Orion Nebula. The place? Heaven, the governing centre of the universe, around which all the galaxies orbit, and the home also of millions of created beings, called angels. Lucifer, a brilliant, handsome and powerful leader, became dissatisfied with his own position. Though he was loved and adored by the other angels, that seemed not enough. It was unlimited power he wanted, unlimited control, independence. So Lucifer proceeded to spread his discontent to the other angels until a third of them backed him. God does not care for his subjects, he insisted. He is a tyrant. It is I who have your interest at heart. Just suppose now God had destroyed Lucifer. Those who were still loyal might well have concluded, look what God has done. Perhaps Lucifer was right. God must be a tyrant. And they would then have remained loyal out of fear. So God provided opportunity to have the rebellion fought with love. Lucifer's character must be unmasked. This mysterious virus of sin must be allowed to show its results to all. And the Creator would place himself on trial before his subjects and let them see just who it is that cares. Lucifer, in open revolt, had disowned the supremacy of God and set up a rebel independence. And now Lucifer, or Satan, with his sympathizers, was banished from heaven. This event is recorded in the oral and written history of many ancient nations, from Babylonia to Mexico. Now, bitter and simmering for revenge, these demons looked for a new homeland and headed for our world, planet Earth, newly created. This would be his battlefield. From here he would fight back. Here he would set up his kingdom and prove his plan was better. And so the main stage of the war now shifted to Earth, but the target of his rage was still God's prince. Our first parents were placed on this earth. It was a beautiful world, singing with life. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful, and multiply, and have dominion. As Satan himself, banished from home, saw the first man and woman appointed custodians over this planet, he was furious, and he planned vengeance. He waited. That fateful day when the demon appeared in a disguise and contrived the first séance was an electrifying experience. He told the happy couple that their Creator was a tyrant. Go it alone, he said. Be independent. You don't need God. And so they joined the rebellion. There was no escaping their guilt. The Creator had surrounded them with evidences of his love, yet they had listened to the enemy's slander and doubted the Creator's integrity. They had failed him. They had known nothing but evil, and God had desired that they should never know evil. They had chosen, and evil they should know. Up till now they were without sin, and they were able to dialogue with God. But sin would now mar this harmony. It would bias them against God's law and defile them. From now on, they and the entire human race would no longer enjoy that luxury. But it was worse. Now that they were separated from the life-giver, the natural consequence would be death. From that day they began to die, cell by cell, and this process would be passed down to all their children. And so today we have a world in agony, and one may ask, well, if God is all-powerful, then why does he permit all this violence, all this poverty, injustice? Why is this lonely planet full of tears? Does God really care? Is there an answer? Well, indeed there is, and it does make sense. It's all about free will. Free will, yes, it's almost as precious as life, isn't it? Let's face it, the Creator could have made us as robots, so we had to do as he said, so that when he pressed a button, as it were, we'd get down on our knees and say, I love you, I love you, I love you. No freedom in that. The fact that we do have freedom to choose tells us much, I believe, about the Creator. I think this points to the reason why he made us. A God of love, his heart bursting with an urge to share, he created intelligent beings as objects of that love. And he loves what he's created so much that he wants them to experience the greatest happiness possible. Therefore, he gives us free will. It's only as we choose to engage in some enterprise that optimum happiness is possible. That couldn't be if we were mere robots. Rather, he wanted from us the natural response of unforced love from a spontaneous and free heart. He's made us free even to disregard his existence if we wish, or to ignore his laws. We were created free to run the world and even to make a mess. You might say that's one of the most winsome, beautiful and basic things about God, his love of liberty. And he gave us laws for our well-being that make a great deal of sense. Ignore them and we suffer, and our actions can make others suffer. Still, in this world so full of confusion today, there are people seeking for answers, and many of them turn to astrology. But back to our story. After mankind's entrapment, Satan had won the first round. Man was now in his grasp, alienated from God. What would happen now? This painful experience became etched in our racial memory. From Sumeria to Mexico, art and literature recorded the fall. In China, Egypt, Babylonia, indeed among all peoples, this tragedy of the devil is the oldest belief from the beginning of history. As the scripture says, for of whom a man is overcome, of the same is he brought into bondage. And so now, having overcome man, Satan became the prince of this world, even its God. This earth was to become the theatre of a drawn-out, incessant contest between God and Satan. And the Lord heard the cries of his suffering people. He was stirred with pity, and he made a promise to the despairing couple which would be passed down to their descendants. In their presence, God addressed Satan and said, I will put enmity between thee, Satan, and the woman, and between thy seed, Satan's followers, and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, Satan, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Now that might sound a little complicated. Let me make it simpler. The message was this: Satan, now symbolized by the serpent, will be opposed by a coming one, termed the woman's seed, and this coming one will ultimately bruise the serpent's head. That is, he will destroy the serpent. But in doing so, he himself will be bruised in the heel. That is, he will be temporarily wounded. And this is the message of the old star signs. let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years. According to very old documents, from the beginning of man's presence on earth, one purpose of the heavenly lights was to be for signs. That is, to signify something beyond themselves, to carry some special teaching different from what is naturally deducible from them. The word signs in this passage from Genesis is the Hebrew word othoth, the plural of oth, from the Hebrew root meaning to come. Hence, a sign of something to come, a future event. We shall soon stumble upon an exciting discovery in the stars. But first, let's lay the foundation. The ancient civilizations believed that God himself named the stars, and the Hebrew writings agree. The psalmist wrote, "He, God, calleth them all by their names." The prophet Isaiah says that the stars were given their names at the time of creation, when God brought forth their host in their numbers. Was there a special purpose in the Creator himself naming the stars? On this very point, the psalmist writes, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world." Here you see a reference to the stars speaking and revealing knowledge and truth. Now this may seem a puzzling statement until we realise that from the days of Adam, God's message and future program for mankind has been outlined through the stars for all to know. Let me assure you, friends, here that we are not talking about demonic astrology and horoscope casting, but we are talking about a story told by the names of the stars and the constellation figures. It's rather a tragedy that many today, because of fears for the future, have turned to the occult to discover what may lie before them. But by a beautiful contrast to these powers of darkness, God, in whom there's light and no darkness at all, has revealed his plans in two beautiful volumes. Firstly, the Scriptures, God's written revelation to man, and secondly, before the Bible ever existed, the 48 constellations told the same story. In the first century, the Apostle Paul tells how the world has a chance to learn the good news, the gospel. Writing to the Romans, he asks, "Have they, the heathen, not heard? Yes, truly they have heard, for," he says, "their sound went unto all the earth, and their words unto the ends of the world." Paul is saying that the heathen around the world have all heard the message of the gospel, and to support his claim, he's quoted from Psalm chapter 19. Just compare these two passages. Paul says, "Their sound went unto all the earth, and their words unto the ends of the earth." The Psalms, talking about the stars, says, "Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world." You see, they're speaking concerning the same subject, the stars. The they who are doing the preaching that Paul refers to is the stars and the constellations of the heavens. Thus the story, whatever it is common to all languages and peoples, as the star names and constellation figures are the same around the world. There is no speech or language, says the psalmist, where their voice is not heard. And the Apostle Paul states here quite clearly that these stars are preaching the gospel. The names of the stars are telling a story. This then is how the heavens declare God's glory, and show forth the knowledge of him. It is worth noting that the names of the star patterns were the same then, over 4,000 years ago, as they are today. Not only the names, but also the figures that have been drawn around these groups of stars have remained the same down through the centuries of time. The Arabs are among the greatest astronomers and historians this world has seen. Al-Bamaza, astronomer for the Caliphs of Granada, speaking of the star signs, says that none of these forms from their first invention have varied in coming down to us, nor one of their words changed, not a point added or removed. A copy, Latin translation, is in the British Museum Library. Did you get that? The star maps we have today, with their figures and names, which all tell the plan of the coming Saviour, have basically never been altered since they were first given about 6,000 years ago. Furthermore, the meaning of the star names is the same in every nation around the world, despite all the differences of language. For example, let's notice this group of stars known as the constellation of Virgo, the Virgin. This was called Virgo by the Romans, Bethulah by the Hebrews, Parthenos by the Greeks, and Kenya by the Indians. Each one of these names means virgin. The same applies to the individual stars within each star group. If we stay with Virgo for this, the brightest star there is Spica, which is Latin for seed. But the Hebrews called it Zerah, which also means seed. We could go through each of the languages, all having the same star name meanings. There must have been a common source, and this common source must have been our first parent, Adam. Before the flood and up to the Tower of Babel, there was only one language throughout the whole earth. Adam was given the star names by God, and these names were then carried with all languages following the dispersion of the Tower of Babel, and each language had the same meaning for the same stars. However, back now to the ancient record of Genesis. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of heaven, and let them be for signs, and seasons, and days, and years." As you drive along a road, a sign conveys information, does it not? We shall see now that the heavenly signs also convey information and give a message through their very names which the Creator gave them. But on the sky map, where does the message begin? Well, the answer is the original star maps began with Virgo, and they went around the circle of the sky and ended with Leo. Here is Virgo at the summer solstice, 4000 BC. That's 6,000 years ago. It is the position of Virgo at noon, located in the highest point of the sky with the sun in the head of the Virgin. Note that Hydra the serpent is lurking close by. This is where we must begin our story, with Virgo. So, we see here a woman, specifically a virgin. In Arabic, this sign is Adora, which means the pure virgin. In Greek, it's Parthenos, which means the maid of virgin pureness. It's interesting that all ancient traditions emphasize the virginity of this woman. But that's not all. The greater wonder is that motherhood attends the Virgin. In the earliest Babylonian and Egyptian representations, she holds an infant in her arms. William Shakespeare refers to this good boy in Virgo's lap. In her hand, you'll have a bright star called Spica. It means the ear or seed. The original Hebrew names of this star were Zerah, seed, and Semak, which means branch. So Virgo is the holder and bringer of an illustrious seed who is contemplated as far greater than herself, and in her hand she bears a branch. Now that the emphasis is clearly upon her offspring rather than upon herself is borne out in her Coptic name, Aspolia, which is the place of the desired branch. Names of stars in this constellation reinforce the message. There is Al-Zimak, Al-Azel, and Subalon, which mean the shoot, the branch, the ear of wheat. One of the stars in the arm carrying the branch is called Al-Murderin, which means who shall come down, or who shall have dominion. This star is also known as Vendemiatrix, a Chaldean word meaning the sun, that's S-O-N, or the branch that comes. This is the same promised seed of the woman who was predicted to assume human flesh to deliver mankind, according to Scripture. It may startle those who never thought of it before, but his symbols are the same in the Bible as in the zodiac. Not only is he the seed, according to John 12:24, he is introduced also as the man whose name is the branch, the servant, the branch, according to Old Testament scriptures. This identification is unmistakable. The virgin awaits her promised son, and this is still further defined by an adjacent constellation sign, Coma. Coma in the Hebrew and Oriental dialects means the desired, the longed for. An ancient Arabian astronomer, Al-Bamazer, describes this zodiac sign. He says, "There arises in the first decan, as the Persians, Chaldeans and Egyptians and the two Hermes and Ascalius teach, a young woman whose Persian name denotes a pure virgin, sitting on a throne, nourishing an infant boy, said boy having a Hebrew name, by some nations called Ihisu, with the signification of Isa, which in Greek is called Christ." Is that surprising? Clearly the woman in Virgo and the woman in this side piece of Virgo are one and the same, and the infant, the seed, and the branch must likewise be identified together. The head of the son is slightly higher than the head of the mother, hieroglyphically symbolizing that he is to be the greater. As in the zodiac he is called the desired, and the Bible gives him the same name, the desire of all nations. Here in an ancient zodiac prophecy, as early as 4000 BC, we have a virgin longing for the birth of her son, a greater one who is desired or expected by all nations. And here is another bombshell. He has a Hebrew name, Yesu. Thousands of kilometres away in the Tin Isles of Britain, there was erected a hand-piled mound of earth vaster in its dimensions than the Great Pyramid of Egypt. This is Glastonbury Tor in Somerset. To this day, the terraces that wind around the Tor to its summit can be traced. On such eminences, the Druids had their astronomical observatories from which they studied the heavens. In this knowledge, the Greek and Roman alike extolled the Druids as the greatest teachers of this complicated science. And latest research shows that the Druids, contrary to the assertion of their enemies, were not pagans who practiced human sacrifice. The more that researchers study the Celtic Druidic religion, the more astonished are they with its similarity with that of old Israel. There are many who maintain that the Druids, simultaneously with the wise men of Persia, had discovered in the heavens the star of prophecy, which heralded the long-expected one who was to lighten the world, the star that should arise out of Jacob. They already knew of the coming Messiah, and his name was known to these British long before the event transpired. It was a name familiar on the lips of every Briton. In the ancient Celtic triads, these words were recorded: "The Lord our God is one. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lift up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in." Who is this King of glory? The Lord Yesu. He is the King of glory. You see, friends, the Druid priesthood knew the name Yesu long beforehand. Now, this name Yesu was incorporated into the Druidic Godhead. In Britain, the name Jesus was always the pure Celtic Yesu. It never changed. In his conflict with the serpent, there is a price to be paid. This is told in the next star sign, Libra, a pair of balances. The position of the beam, which a feather's weight may alter, bespeaks the fortunes of the characters pictured, the adjustment of a vast and mighty feud. And the whole instrument in operation indicates the eternal justice which presides over the universe. The downside of the scales is toward the deadly scorpion. In some zodiacs, the bowl on the left was held by the scorpion's claws. In others, the claws occasionally intruded on the place of the scales. In other languages, Libra was given names meaning purchase, redemption, gain, and also the gracious branch. Star names in this constellation reflect the same meaning. A star on one of the scales means the price deficient. A star name on the other side signifies the price that covers. This same Hebrew word means atonement or covering of sins. Another star is Zubin Akrabi, which means the price of the conflict. Did you know that the imagery of Libra is also used in the Bible? In the Psalms, it is said that men are laid in the balance. In Daniel, they are weighed in the balances and found wanting. One can be saved only through the deliverer's sacrifice as our substitute. Sin, you see, is like a debt. It can be discharged by a friend of the debtor. If the government condemns, the government can accept a substitute for the penalty. So we are informed that Jesus has redeemed us to God. He's repurchased us by his own shed blood. Hieroglyphically, in the next sign we see a man riding on a horse, just as the Messiah was to do eventually as he rode into Jerusalem on a donkey. But he would be rejected and despised. He is shown here pushing with his lance at the heart of some victim. His dual role of both sacrifice and the offerer of the sacrifice. He is positioned directly above the Southern Cross, which speaks to us of his death upon a cross. Centaurus was anciently called Bezer, which means the despised, Azmeth, which means sin offering, and Nemu, meaning appointed to die. The brightest star seen in the foreleg is Ptolemy, meaning the heretofore and the hereafter. That is, the eternal one. It is also known as Chiron, signifying the pierced. The star Pholus means the mediator. Thus the coming one will be despised by man and an offering for sin, who is to be pierced as in crucifixion. This appointed one is to offer himself as a sacrifice and be the mediator between the two parties, God and man. Around the world, this unique person was expected by the Chinese, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Hindus, the Germans, the Romans, the British, and to name a few. He was also expected by the Egyptians. In the Hebrew writings were more than 300 prophecies concerning this coming one. These prophecies were specific, detailed and complete, actually pinpointing the time of his appearance, even to the year, and the place of his coming. It was believed that a new star would appear shortly before the time of his birth. Well known is the record of the Magi, these wise men from a foreign country who actually came to Jerusalem and thence to Bethlehem to find and worship a newborn child. Well, you might ask, how did they ever know about him? How did they know that he deserved worship? How were they so sure that his birth had occurred in Palestine? What induced them to launch an expedition lasting several months and involving such a costly and laborious search? The answer is, friends, that quite simply, the signs in the sky, the signs in the star maps, and the very detailed prophecies connected with them made them aware of the meaning. They knew that God himself would be born of a virgin among the Jews, and that the sign of the birth would be a new star in a certain constellation. It is an astronomical fact that in the week of Jesus Christ's birth, the sun stood in Virgo. It is also a verifiable fact that just 9 months earlier, the sign of the Virgin at midnight was just rising on the eastern horizon. On the same date at midnight, the stars of the constellation Coma, the special sign of the woman's infant seed, the desire of nations, was likewise just rising on the eastern horizon. Several nations preserved an ancient prophecy that in the period in which the promised one should be born, there would appear a very bright star in the sky. This new star was expected to appear in the sign of the Virgin. It is a fact that a new and peculiar star did make its appearance in the period immediately preceding Jesus' birth. It was so bright as to be visible even in the daytime, and it continued in the sky during the whole period of Jesus' lifetime and for a period thereafter. It was in the first decan of Virgo, namely Coma, which was the sign of the infant with the Virgin, and it marked the very head of that infant. The prophets marveled at the fact. Into enemy territory, where Satan claimed dominion, God was permitting his Son to come in the form of a helpless baby, subject to the weakness of humanity. So, the deliverer assumed a material body in order that he might rescue mankind. Paul, a former enemy of Jesus, later would write, "Of his own free will he gave up all he had and took the nature of a servant. He became like man and took human likeness. He was humble and walked in the path of obedience all the way to death, his death on the cross." Here you see the almanac from Sepur, an almanac which recorded events in the sky that were seen at this time. Lucifer, that is Satan, had said God did not care about man. But now the universe saw the Son of God step down from the throne and demonstrate his great love. At this time, wise men from the east came asking for a newborn king and saying that they had seen his star in the east. Herod, the Roman-appointed local puppet king, was nervous about a possible usurper to his throne, and he inquired, what time did the star appear? Consequently, the jealous despot sent his murderers to Bethlehem to butcher an estimated 20 unweaned male infants living there, but they missed the one they were after. Just in time, Jesus was hustled out of Bethlehem and taken to Egypt. until Herod was dead. Jesus had come to demonstrate God's love for mankind. He suffered our sorrows, enabling him to understand all that we go through. Jesus also predicted his own sacrificial death for mankind. He was publicly announced as the Lamb of God who would die as a sacrifice for mankind, going as a lamb to the slaughter. Now on the star maps there appears a ram, popularly known as Aries. In various languages he is called the Lamb sent forth, the sheep gentle and merciful, the altar, the sacrifice of righteousness, the Lamb, the branch. And the names of principal stars in Aries mean the wounded, the bruised, the slain. I tell you, friends, Jesus' death was no accident. It was prophesied, it was planned for, even to the very day and year. Of course, evil men put him on a cross, but Jesus gave himself willingly into their hands to do it. He was to die to pay the penalty for our wrongs. And everyone who would choose to accept his death on their behalf could ultimately be freed from everlasting death. That was the purpose of his sacrifice. The crucifixion occurred on the 14th day of the Jewish month Nisan, which was the time of the full moon. Jesus Christ was nailed to the cross. The nails pierced his hands and feet. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. The sun climbed high into the sky, and by midday it was overhead. Suddenly the sun went black. The darkness continued for 3 hours. Could this have been a natural eclipse? Oh, indeed no. You see, it was the time of the full moon, and the moon could never eclipse the sun at that time because it was in the opposite side of the sky. On the day of Jesus' death in March-April AD 31, the sun was in the constellation Aries. At midday, Aries, the sign of the dying ram or lamb, stood right over the cross, right over Jerusalem. Then the sun was blacked out. At night, when the sun doesn't shine, we can see the stars. I don't know whether the stars became visible that day, but if they did, one might have seen 2 stars standing very close to the darkened sun. You see, at the very hour of the crucifixion, the sun stood at the very spot in Aries marked by the 2 stars El Nath, which means the pierced, the wounded or slain, and Al Sheraton, which means the bruised or wounded. The Old Testament prophets said he would be pierced, wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities. And now overhead stood those stars which were associated with the death of the promised one. When the Messiah was born, the sun was in the Virgin. And now when the Messiah died as God's Lamb, the sun was in Aries, the sign of the Lamb. But not just a lamb who was wounded and pierced on the star map. Who could have arranged that to have been overhead at the right time? Who? I suggest but the Creator himself. Now Satan had charged that God was a tyrant who did not care about his subjects, and that he, Satan, could set up a better government. But when the watching universe saw the centuries of hatred, heartache and death upon planet Earth, they began to understand. And when they saw God come to the rescue of man and saw Satan instigate the crucifixion of his own Creator, inflicting on him the most shameful, the most agonizing of deaths, could there be any longer any doubt? The cross was both the ultimate evidence of his malicious hatred and of the Creator's great love for man. No longer can there be any doubt as to who is responsible for this planet's tears and who it is that really does care. The prophet writes, "And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night." No longer would Satan be allowed entrance to the heavenly gates to represent and accuse people on planet Earth. When Jesus died, Satan thought he had him. But 3 days later, Jesus suddenly burst from the tomb. Make no mistake, my friends, Jesus rose from the dead. That's world history and not fiction. There is evidence, reasonable evidence, that would pass the closest scrutiny in a law court. As a matter of fact, in my book, Ark of the Covenant, there are 5 chapters of indisputable evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. If you want evidence, if you want to study it, make sure you study the evidence in this book. Death could not hold him because he had never done wrong. And soon after this, Jesus ascended back to heaven. From now on, Jesus, having overcome Satan, would be the one to represent us. And if any man sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous. This is the constellation known as Ophiuchus. We see here this constellation on the old star maps. We see a great serpent in all its giant proportions. The serpent's reaching after the heavenly crown, and the strong man Ophiuchus is wrestling with him for the crown. As the serpent reaches for the crown, he's held tight by Ophiuchus, the serpent holder. His Egyptian name means the chief who shall come. He is also called the desired one. He is also said to be bruised. And not only that, he's called the healer and the universal remedy. You notice the scorpion raises its tail to strike his heel. Symbolically, the scorpion and the serpent are the same enemy. With one foot lifted from the serpent's tail as stung and hurt, he is in the act of crushing the serpent's head with the other. You remember that world's oldest prophecy that we saw earlier concerning the coming seed of the woman? The prophecy said, "He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel." Now the meanings of some star names in this constellation are the serpent held, treading underfoot, bruised, the wounding, contending. In Arabic and Syriac, Scorpio's name means wounding, conflict, war. In Coptic it means attack of the enemy. The principal star in this group is Antares, which means wounding. This star shines ominously with a deep red light. The star Al-Akrib means wounding him that cometh. The star Lesath in the sting of the scorpion means the perverse. You see, it is a battle for dominion. The dominion that was stolen from our first parents and usurped by Satan, but is now to be regained for mankind by the coming deliverer. One of serpent's stars has a name meaning the accursed. When Jesus rose from the dead and returned to heaven undefeated, Satan knew that he was doomed. He was insane with fury. Jesus was now totally out of his reach. Now, if someone wants to hurt you, what's the best way to do it? attack you physically or hurt you through someone that you love. Satan decided to get back at Jesus through the people Jesus loved, those he had left behind. First, he organised the persecutions by the Jewish leaders against the Christians, the followers of Jesus. Then, behind the scenes, he instigated the Roman Empire's slaughter of millions of Christians. On the star maps, a beautiful woman is depicted in chains, bound hand and foot, fastened down, unable to rise. The star names mean struck down, weak, the afflicted, the chained. Now in the Bible, the people of God are often depicted as a woman. Jealous rivals hate her, world powers are often employed against her. Innocently, she's made to suffer. By the world at large, she is hated. Throughout history, this has been the pattern. I recall that in Europe alone, for over 1,000 years, there was instituted an era of fierce persecution against the followers of Jesus. And at that time, every imaginable method of torture was used. 50 million or more true Christians were slaughtered for their faith. But this avalanche of terror was unable to extinguish their faith, because there was a promise of final victory, and that is going to be our next section. It is reported that when Hitler saw that he was about to lose World War II, he confided to one of his officers, "If I go down and Germany goes down, I shall drag the whole world down with me." So, as Satan's end approaches, he is working overtime to drag this world down with him. The final showdown looms before us, and here we see a lion, king of beasts, the sign of the Lion of Judah, King of Kings. Thoroughly roused, this lion is full of majesty. His name means, he that tears asunder, that destroys, that leaps forth as a flame. The lion, associated with royalty and dominion, is fitted for the work of capture and destruction, so fierce and powerful that no other animal can withstand him. Star names in Leo mean the shining forth, the exalted, the judge or lord who comes with haste, the judge coming who seizes or violently takes, the feet which crush, the punishing or tearing of him that lays waste, and the putting down of the enemy. It is a deadly war, you see. He is also pictured as a mighty man who holds aloft a great sword in one hand and carries away the reeking snake-covered head of the enemy in the other. His name, Perseus, means the breaker. Names of his stars are he who breaks, who carries away, and who helps. The ancients understood him to be the son of the Divine Father who would rescue the chained woman and destroy her enemy. The monster's snake-covered head has a star called Medusa, meaning the trodden underfoot. Other stars in this snake head are Al-Gol, the evil spirit, Al-Oneh, the weakened, the subdued, and lest there be any doubt as to whom the severed head belongs, one star is actually named Rosh Satan, which means Satan's head. Jesus made a prophecy. He said, "There shall be signs in the stars." The biblical prophets stated that as the end time draws near, the stars shall fall from heaven as a sign, like unripe figs falling from the tree when a strong wind shakes it. Now this prophecy was strikingly and impressively fulfilled on the night of November the 13th, 1833. Over millions of square miles it was seen. The most extensive and spectacular display of falling stars ever recorded. Astonished eyewitnesses declared that never did rain fall much thicker than the meteors fell toward the earth. The whole sky seemed in motion. From 2 a.m. to broad daylight, it seemed as though all the stars were assembling at one point and simultaneously shooting like missiles to every part of the horizon, to the north, south, east and west. Thousands followed thousands, hour after hour, as though created for the occasion. Careful scientific accounts indicate that more than 1 billion shooting stars appeared over Canada and the United States alone. Henry James Ward wrote the next day in the New York Journal of Commerce, "They flew, they were cast, like the unripe fruit, which at first refuses to leave the branch, and when it does break its hold, flies swiftly straight off, descending, and in the multitude falling, some across the track of others, as they are thrown with more or less force." The phenomenon was repeated and distributed over various parts of the world soon after. A correspondent in the New York Journal of Commerce, November 14, 1833, says, "No philosopher or scholar has told or recorded an event like that of yesterday morning. A prophet 1800 years ago foretold it exactly." The biblical prophet said that Judah's lion would bring on the falling of the stars. This is the prophet of John in the Revelation. And do you know the part of the sky from which that great shower of falling stars emanated? Perhaps I should let a scientist tell you. The meteors, he says, as seen by most observers, appeared to proceed from a fixed point in the heavens. Those who marked its position among the fixed stars observed it to be in the constellation Leo, in which it appeared stationary, accompanying that constellation in its diurnal progress. Did you get that? It is an astronomical fact that at the time prophesied occurred the most extensive and spectacular display of falling stars in history. Such an event, according to prophecy, was to be orchestrated by the Lion of Judah and would be as a warning, a signpost telling us that we were entering the last phase of man's history on earth. Now here is a fact. This extravaganza did emanate from Leo, which is the zodiac sign of the judge who is coming to execute judgment and reign as King of Kings. Long ago, Satan had boasted, "I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the sides of the north. I will be like the Most High." Now, what does this expression mean? I will sit upon the sides of the north. Friends, each night as the stars move across the face of the northern hemisphere sky, there is one spot that appears not to move. If you were to set a camera in super slow motion, you would be able to photograph this scene. Now, as we see this other photograph, the location of the North Polar Star is right here. This is taken from an observatory. You'll notice how all the sky appears to revolve around the North Polar Star. This effect is brought about by what is known as the axis of the Earth's rotation. Throughout history, sailors have navigated by the position of the North Polar Star. The pole star, if you didn't know, has always been a central point in the northern heavens from which to locate positions on Earth. Position of the pole star on the old star maps. These maps, as we noted earlier, are 6,000 years old in their origins. 6,000 years ago, when this Earth first fell under the power of Satan, and the promise of a coming Messiah was recorded in the stars, at that time the pole star was Alpha Draconis in the sign of the dragon. Satan was portrayed on the star maps as winding himself around the sides of the north, coiling himself almost completely around the northern pole of the heavens, as if to indicate his subtle influence on world affairs. Symbolically, the throne, the central governing point of the earth's motion, was in Satan's possession. But now, as we move near the end of the drama, something has changed in the sky as seen from Earth. At the turn of the 20th century into the 21st century, notice, here is a new position for the North Polar Star. You'll see it here at the bottom of this picture. The dragon actually has fallen lower in the sky, and the celestial pole is now moving toward the constellation Cepheus, who is the crowned and enthroned king with a scepter in his hand, and his feet planted on the present pole star. He is also called Per-Kuhor, which means "this one cometh to rule." Star names in the star sign here mean the Redeemer, the Shepherd, the quickly returning, who bruises or breaks, and treading underfoot. According to the biblical prophecy of Revelation, Jesus is to return as King of Kings and Lord of Lords, with a crown on his head and a scepter in his hand. He is coming back to interrupt world history and take dominion. From the center of the universe, from beyond the glories of the Orion Nebula, this one comes to rule. This one comes to rule. South Australian scientist Barry Setterfield recounts the true story of a missionary who returned from the back country of Japan. She had just been where no missionary had ever been before. Setterfield reports, and I quote his exact words, "She began to tell the story of redemption, the story of the Lord Jesus Christ. And when she had finished, an old lady got up very excited and said, 'I've known the story for a long time, and I've told my people about the Saviour. It's all written there in the names of the stars, but I've never known his name, the name Jesus, before.'" Let me tell you this, the world is heading for the biggest spectacle in its history. When Jesus returns, the sky will light up from London to Los Angeles and from Melbourne to Moscow. At that time, the kings of the earth and the great men and the rich man and the chief captains and the mighty men and every bondman and every free man will hide themselves in the dens and the rocks of the mountains, and say to the mountains and rocks, "Fall on us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, for the great day of his wrath is come. And who shall be able to stand?" And those who are ready for him will look up and say, "Lo, this is our God. We have waited for him, and he will save us." Friends, due to the exploding interest worldwide in these and other discoveries by our teams,
We have prepared materials that can be shared with your friends and your neighbours. The book Dead Men's Secrets is the result of up to 12 years research in over 30 countries. Surprising discoveries in lost cities of the dead. Seafloor, jungle and desert sands give up 1,000 forgotten secrets. Technology that vanished. What wiped it out? Did the ancients know too much? Who mapped Australia thousands of years before Australia was discovered? The Ark Conspiracy. Cover-ups, betrayals and miracles. This is the cloak and dagger story behind the discovery of Noah's Ark in the mountains of Turkey. The attempts to suppress the news. Why some people reject the discovery. And the solid evidence that this may very well be the real thing. A true life thriller. Archaeology at its most exciting. Sting of the scorpion. Astrology exposed. The truth behind star names and signs. Ancient civilizations believed that a serpent, which represented the devil, took control of the world. They believed that a virgin's baby would fight the serpent, defeat him, and bring peace, life and happiness back to mankind. The pictures on the sky map were used to describe that story, and not to tell people's fortunes through the stars. The names of the stars, as well as the star sign pictures, told that story. Curse of the Hatana Gods. This one is a stunning real-life adventure. One of the most isolated islands on Earth is Rotuma, ancient home to a race of giants. But Rotuma shielded a sinister secret for which there was no scientific explanation. They called it the Curse of Hatana. The evidence for the ancient giants and the incredible story of a face-to-face encounter with the curse is the story of this book. Sinai's Exciting Secrets. This is a compilation of information concerning the existence and discovery of the true Mount Sinai in Arabia. Do you believe in miracles? Then catch the spy story that's in this book, which is probably one of the most exciting stories of the 20th century. It's in a spiral-bound format with information from quite a number of sources and recent developments that have been taking place in the country as a result of the discovery. Every 3 months we produce a regular newsletter which goes worldwide into many countries. This deals with the recent developments and new materials which are continually being produced by our team, plus other significant archaeological finds around the world and news of other important world developments relating to the coming New World Order. If I had to recommend any particular publication, this would be it. This is the one that keeps you up to date with what is happening. We also produce spiral-bound volumes of the previous issues, back issues of Update International Newsletter. We at the moment have 2 books, Back Issues Volume 1, which contains the first 10 issues of Update International, and Back Issues Volume number 2, which contains Update Issues 11 to 20. These cover all the discoveries in which myself, Jonathan Gray, and my associates are involved, with extra information as well as ancient giants, dinosaurs, mysteries of ancient South America, surprises in the Grand Canyon, Chinese pyramids, ancient Egyptians in Australia, lost technology, and much more. Scores of photos, maps and diagrams. And there's also an index in the second volume to all questions and topics found in both volumes. Now, among the videos which we have available are the series Surprising Discoveries numbers 1 and 2. The first video runs for 2 hours with 3 subjects. Part 1 has Noah's Ark been found, the Noah's Ark story. Part 2, Lost Secrets of the Ancients, ancient technology. And Part 3, Into the Forbidden Valley, trip to Noah's gravesite. Surprising Discoveries number 2 runs for 2.5 hours. Part 1 contains the lost cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, Dead Sea sites. Part 2, In Search of Pharaoh's Lost Army, the Red Sea Crossing. And Part 3, Smuggled Out of the Desert, the real Mount Sinai story with live footage. And finally, on the Ark of the Covenant subject, we have a book of 600 pages which deals with the subject of this video but goes even further. When Jonathan Gray set out to prove an amateur archaeologist's claims, he never counted on being targeted for murder or facing political pressure to keep a major discovery underground. Fast-moving, spellbinding, well-documented, this book reveals forgotten voyages, secret tunnels and acts of intrigue. The CD is for computers with Macintosh and Windows. It reports on the Ark of the Covenant but goes even further, with Noah's Ark, Sodom and Gomorrah, the Red Sea crossing and the Mount Sinai discoveries. In this CD there are up to 8 hours of interactive viewing, including 1 hour of exclusive new video footage. And it provides on the internet an international online conference for discussion and debate.